So Lex Fridman recently interviewed Tal Wilkenfeld, who's a very well-known bassist, singer, songwriter, and guitarist who's played with everybody from Prince, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Jeff Beck, and many, many more, asking her about a whole variety of topics. But the couple of clips that I'm interested in are a few where she talks about how to learn guitar. And I just want to give my opinion, my reaction to some of the things she said. Is she right? Is she wrong? What do I think about her suggestions for learning guitar? So let's dig in.
You think every instrument is its own journey? As you play guitar, you play bass, you sing. Just the mastery of an instrument, or let's avoid the word mastery, the understanding of an instrument is its own thing, or are they somehow like physical manifestations of the same thing?
It's both. You know, like every instrument has its strengths, beauty, limitations, range, like possible range that can, be extended to some degree or another, depending on who you are. Like trumpet or something, like certain people can hit higher notes than others, blah, blah, blah. But that being said, we're all playing the same 12 or 24 or however you divide the octave, that many notes. We're all playing the same notes. So in that sense, it's all the same thing. It's just music, or better yet, it's just art or expression. But yeah, every instrument has, you got to go through the physical aspects of it, the motor skills and all of that. And hopefully you get through that really quickly so you can get to the expression quickly. Because if you get stuck in just that first phase, that'd be really boring.
Yeah, but that's a pretty long phase. The technical skill required to really play an instrument.
For some people, it's a long thing, and some people it's short.
This is really interesting. So I agree that there is this sort of technical mastery that needs to be achieved before being able to be more creatively expressive. And I think that's one of the biggest things that many students try to avoid. So they try to somehow ignore the basic fact that they need to develop some level of technical mastery, which many times is boring and repetitive to achieve. But you need to achieve something like that before being able to do the fun stuff. So this is where a lot of people get stuck in kind of like this intermediate level, let's call it, where they want to play more advanced things, and they keep trying to jump to those advanced things, but they don't know the music theory well enough. They don't understand the notes well enough. I would even include those as part of technical mastery, knowing your instrument. It's all part of knowing how to use your instrument. And you can't avoid those. You can try to, and you're always just going to get kicked back to the limitation of the fact that you just don't know those things. So don't skip the boring and repetitive tasks. You do need those.
It might have to do with like how you learn, and getting to know like your strengths in learning. Like more oral, or more like, is it more like like what's your strength, and playing off of those strengths. So for me, like it was like I was saying earlier, it was just an intuitive thing that I knew I can feel when my brain is full, like that it needs processing time.
That's another really good point. When you're practicing, you really want to be in this sort of sweet spot between the thing you're working on challenging you enough and being difficult enough that you feel challenged, that it creates some growth in what you're doing. And so that's what I feel like she's getting at with the feeling full, is you can like actually feel your brain working hard to understand something. And then once you've done that for a certain period of time, whatever that is for you in the moment, then you need to give it a rest. You can't try and move beyond that. But you also don't want to be at a spot where you're just doing the same thing and not having a feeling of being full in your brain. It just means you're not challenging yourself enough, and you're not actually going to grow from doing that. We see this a lot when people are playing the same songs over and over again, and it's basically muscle memory at that point. They kind of zone out, and they're just playing through it. They're not really challenging themselves. Another example would be people who play scales very mindlessly or certain patterns mindlessly. And then they wonder why they're not getting better, but they're not engaging their mind in what they're doing. So you need to really be focused. It's tough work doing this kind of deep practice because you have to be very, very focused, more than most people are in any other activity, and really know everything that you're doing so that you can improve. So it's very taxing on the brain to do that. If you're not feeling that when you're practicing, you're not really practicing in the way you should be.
And so I listen to that. I don't push past it. Even if it's like 1 minute and I do something, I'm like, okay, silence. And then I come back and and I trust that it's going to be there, and it is there. So just trusting yourself, I think, is really important. Trusting that you know you better than anybody else is going to know you. So that's the kind of thing with teachers that can be either really, really helpful and great, or really not great. Like, I'm primarily self-taught. I've had amazing mentors of all walks of life, and I think I'm unbelievably blessed that my mentors are some of my favorite musicians on earth, whether it's Leonard Cohen or Jeff Beck or Wayne Shorter, whoever these people are. Like, they are my favorite musicians. So not everyone has that opportunity, but what the opportunity that we have now that I didn't have when I was starting is that everything's on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Like, every interview with
everything is on YouTube, including reaction videos to these videos.
I agree with myself, and then I don't agree with myself. And the reason is, I do believe that there is something that happens when you're in person with a master. In some cases, that there is something transferred that is not intellectual, it's not spoken, there's something else that happens.
So there's a couple things here to point out. I agree with her about the fact that there's so much information now, whether it's on YouTube or other online sources. So the information is all there. The one thing she doesn't get into, it's an interesting point, saying that there's something special about being in the presence of other people. That's definitely true. I think it heightens our awareness and our focus when we're playing with other people, obviously. But she doesn't talk about the issue with having so much information. And I think it's one that a lot of you guys experience, because I get messages about this all the time, is that there's so much information. There's too much information, and it's not organized in any sort of way that is easy for you to access. And that's one of the reasons you want to get a teacher and have a certain system that you follow so that you can make sense of this ocean of information, and just process what you need to work on in the moment. So that's really important on the practicing side.
Yeah, slowing down is really great too.
What do you mean slowing down?
Slowing everything down. It could be, I can play something really fast, but I may want to practice it. Like,
go slow as possible.
Because there's all these micro movements and that are happening that if you just go, like, you can't pay as...
I know for a fact some of you guys are practicing your scales like that, and we're going to fix that today.
Close attention to the exact tone that you're pulling from each note. And there's a lot to pay attention to how my fingers are touching the string here. Mm-hmm. Like, I can change my tone a million ways just by the direction of this finger. And same with how this lands and how hard I'm attacking the string. And with what intention am I hitting the string? Emotionally, physically. And so even if you can go blah, 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 play that so slow. See how locked into a pocket you can be. See how you feel every aspect of that, because then when it gets sped up, it's still there with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's kind of like...
So let's take that idea of playing slow and give you guys some actual concrete examples on the guitar that you can use. Let's take a scale. Let's take the C major scale. Let's start real simple. There are so many possibilities here, which is what she's getting at, that if you're not focused, you're missing out on a lot of the development you could be having. So let's take our C major scale. Now there, I'm playing it kind of a slow, medium tempo, but it's still too fast for me to really get the kind of nuance she's talking about. I don't really have time. I wasn't really focused on how my picking is, what the sound was. If we take it even slower, I can see, okay, what is my pick angle here? How much force am I using? Am I using an arm movement? Or more of a wrist movement? More of a thumb movement? How does that change the sound? Which of those do I want to use? Maybe I want to adjust and get more of a downward slant of that instead of that. Maybe I want to adjust and be further down here or more up here. Now that's just the right hand. What about my left hand? We can talk about what fingering I'm using. Where is that finger on the fret? Am I using more force than necessary? Like maybe I'm pushing too hard. How is my thumb supporting the other fingers? So as we go through this, you want to be just, I like to think about this as like just asking questions, like why am I doing what I'm doing? And take it in as your whole body. So even right now, I just noticed, wow, I'm kind of slouching. So I need to kind of sit up in a more upright but like relaxed state. So let's see. Let's go even slower. Yeah, even on some of those, I noticed when I hit this, I had some other strings ringing. So maybe I need to be more careful about muting some of this. Even just going through it like that, you don't have to do this for the entire practice, but it is in itself a good exercise to just become more aware, which helps you in all aspects of playing music, improvising, whatever, because a large portion of this, as you get more advanced, is just having more awareness of everything else that's happening and yourself. So we're basically practicing this kind of mindfulness or awareness so that it's just a part of what we do as a musician. Let's see what else Tal has to say about this.
Like the transcended and included thing that Ken
Talking about meditation.
talks about, like it's like,
And I guess that's what meditation can do for you, is to like really listen to your, like observe every aspect of your body, the breath and all this. Here you're observing every element, like every super detailed element of playing a single note.
yeah,
That's cool that if you speed it up, it's still there with you.
it is. Yeah, it is. Because I hear there are certain people, it's like they play really fast, but I don't hear the fullness of tone always. And it's like, well, it's probably because maybe it's because they didn't slow it down and really sit with each note and let it like resonate through their whole being. It's spiritual. It's like a spiritual expression. It's not just like, it's not a sport. A lot of people treat music like a sport.
Yeah. Since starting to learn more like Stevie Ray Vaughan versus Jimi Hendrix, I would spend quite a long time on single notes of just bending, just listening to what you can do with bends, just bending. Just thinking like people like B.B. King and all these blues musicians like spend a career just making a single note cry.
Yeah.
There's like an art form to that.
Yeah.
And I think you putting it like taking it really slow, which I never really thought of, is a really good idea. Like really slow it down.
It's the same with like sitting with your own emotions. It's like when emotions are overwhelming to us, we get real busy or we move real fast because it's like we don't want to feel our feelings. And those are the moments to slow yourself down
And observe it. Anger, jealousy.
and just be with it. Just be with it. Be cool with it. Like love it. Love the anger.
All right, now let's look at one other clip from this interview from Tal.
You picked up the guitar when you were 14. Let's go back. And one interesting thing that just jumped out at me is you said you learned how to practice in your head because you only had 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Your parents would only let you practice for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that Coltrane did the same. He was not the practice part, but he was able to play instruments in his head
Hmm.
as a way to like think through different lines, different musical thoughts, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I just maybe can you tell the story of that?
Yeah, I just grew up in a environment that was focused on academia,
Yeah.
and I fell in love with guitar and really just wanted the focus to be that. So my limit was 30 minutes a day for, I don't even remember how many times a week. Might have been every day or 5 days a week, whatever.
So your parents didn't want you to play more than that.
No. And so I just learned how to visualize the fretboard in my head, and I practice all day in my head. It's kind of like, the Queen's Gambit, the TV show with Anya Taylor-Joy, and she just like
On the
sees
ceiling.
it on the ceiling. I used to do that with the fretboard. Yeah, just practice. And I actually recommend it to every musician, because if you're just practicing here, you don't know what is more dominant necessarily. Is it this, or is it your motor skills? If you just take that away and do it here, you've got it. So
This is a really, really good point, and one that seems obvious, but I guarantee most of you are not doing this. The visualization. So even if we just take that major scale, but you can apply this to anything you're practicing. Whether it's harmony that you're trying to get a grip on, music theory concepts, technical exercise stuff, you can totally do it away from the guitar. Basically, my suggestion for doing it, like what she's saying, is it's completely visualizing it. So you want to close your eyes and imagine yourself doing that. You might move your fingers as you're doing it to connect to that, but then later you don't really even need to. You're just conjuring up your image of the fretboard and then basically playing guitar on that. And as you get better at this, you end up even hearing what you're playing in your head a little bit. So you can play certain things that are, say, common licks visually, like visualizing it, and you'll get a sense of hearing it just from that. It's really, really important, especially for these master musicians. You'll find that a lot of them do this. So they might talk about, I only practice 30 minutes a day or an hour. But when you really dig into it, they're visualizing their instrument and music for like hours a day, and have been for decades. So there's time on our instrument, but there's also a lot of musical practice we can do outside of having our instrument with us.
Glad that happened and that I learned how to do that. And in terms of like learning fast, because like I had to like learn how to, I had to try to absorb a lot of information in a short amount of time when I did have the instrument. I kind of would like do things in bursts, like even in that half an hour, I would just go like play for a couple minutes, and then I'd stop for like a minute, and then I'd do it again, and I noticed there was like a huge difference between the first time and the second time. Whereas if I just kept repeating stuff, it would be like much slower.
Well, what did you do in that minute?
Just hang out.
Just integrate, like.
Yeah, I just like my brain. It's like my brain was telling me like, just chill out for a sec. That's enough information. Let me take a second to integrate that.
Yeah.
That's what.
Tal seems very, very in tune with what's going on in her brain, in her mind, which might be one of the reasons that she's so good at. She develops so quickly on her instruments. So the idea here is, if you're practicing something, first of all, break it down into smaller chunks. So even if you're playing over a tune, you want to break that down into maybe just a single chord that you're working on, or a single part of a progression, or single phrase, single piece of vocabulary, and then play that and give yourself a break. Almost like if you were running a sprint, you would sprint and then you would give yourself, maybe you sprint for 30 seconds, and you give yourself at least 30 seconds to rest. That just lets your body kind of recover from what you're doing and process what just happened. Same as if you're playing a solo, and for the audience, you want to play something and then also give them space to digest what you're doing. You need to give yourself space to digest, hey, what did I just do? Did I make mistakes in there? Was I playing that how I wanted to? It kind of goes back to what you were saying about playing slow. It gives yourself time to really understand the fullness of what you're doing.
But at least what it felt like to me. And the most hilarious thing happened a couple months ago. I know you're friends with Andrew Huberman. So he put out some clip, which was a part of one of his podcasts about learning. And he said that there was some research done on learning fast, and that if you practice something for, a minute or so, and then you let your brain rest for 30 seconds or a minute, that in that 30 seconds or a minute, your brain does the repetition 20 to 30 times faster and in reverse. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool, because that's what I used to do when I was a kid. Like, now there's science that proves that, which is really cool for musicians to know that that's a good way to practice efficiently. Because, like some musicians, they're like practicing for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I've never done that. I've never practiced more than an hour a day, even now. Like, I've just that's my technique, and it works.
All right, so I hope that was interesting. I think there's a lot of takeaways here. First one is play slowly, practice slowly if you're not. And then also some of these ideas around how to practice and some of the specific tactics, like giving yourself a break when you've played a certain phrase, scheduling your sessions in such a way where you give yourself that time, and then also visualizing outside of your practice time on your instrument. There's a lot of really interesting things in this interview. I recommend checking out the full thing. Thanks guys for watching. If you guys want to comment below what's another video you would like to see me react to or give my opinion on, let me know in the comments. You can just link to it or put a comment with anything else you'd like to say about this video. Hit the like button and subscribe if you want to stick around and watch more of my videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys.